With that down, let's move on to our second main topic today. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Big Wave, who writes, "Hey, John, we're a little over 10 years into the up to 10 Best Picture era. While I was a proponent at the time, I've started to think that we should maybe go back to having just 5 Best Picture nominees. We've now had 2 years in a row with a Best Picture nominee that didn't have any other major nominations. And it feels like the past few years have had 3 to 4 Best Picture nominees that really didn't have much of a shot." All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, we are now getting on 10 years into this great experiment. Now, I remember back in the day, it was the year that The Dark Knight came out. And there was a lot of stir because The Dark Knight did not get a Best Picture nomination. And that was the year that there was still only 5 spots for Best Picture. I think everybody agrees that had we had the current rules that there could be up to 10 nominees, The Dark Knight would have got a Best Picture nomination. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But there was so much discussion surrounding that this little seed of an idea that had been around the Academy already about the idea of expanding the Best Picture from 5 to up to 10, the Dark Knight situation really kind of kicked that into overdrive. And the following year was the first year that we could have anywhere from 7 to 10 nominees for Best Picture. And I think it has played a significant and important and beneficial role in the Academy. There are films now every year that, like I said, had it been around when The Dark Knight was around, it would have gotten a Best Picture nomination that always could have been hanging on it as one of the honors that it always received. But it never did. But in the 10 years since, we have had a number of movies that have been able to boast and claim that our picture, our little movie, was a Best Picture nominee. And I think that's important and that's good. The viewer raises a very good question, though. The question of, the thing is, we're getting a lot of years now where there are a number of nominees, sometimes more than half, that you just know don't have any chance at all of actually winning Best Picture. And it's just kind of becomes noise pollution to have them there. As they so accurately pointed out, it had been decades since we had a Best Picture nominee nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars that didn't have any other nominations in any of the other major categories of lead acting, lead actress, supporting actor, director, writer, original or adapted screenplay, cinematography. It hadn't happened for decades. And now we've got 2 years in a row where it's happened. So the question kind of becomes, are we diluting the gene pool a bit by having this many? Or is that whole foundational issue of why they instituted this thing in the first place of having more films be recognized for the excellence they brought to the table that year? Is that in and of itself? Look, Ford v. Ferrari has no chance. Ford v. Ferrari has no chance of winning. We know that. There's a number of films on the Best Picture list that have no chance at winning this year. But does the benefit of the fact that the Oscars get to acknowledge and honor a few more extra films, even if they don't have a chance of winning, does that benefit outweigh the negative of having some, quote unquote, dead weight on the nominee ballot? So that's the question that comes up. So Aaron, let me ask you that question. We are now almost a decade into this experiment. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling about it right now? Do you still feel that the good of having the extra films get that recognition outweighs the bad of kind of having, just dead weight along the way? How are you feeling about it? Is it time to change back to 5? Do you think they should expand it? Do you think they should keep going with it? How are you feeling about it right now?
I think that it is absolutely beneficial to the industry, the people working in the industry. I agree with what you said. This opening it up to 7 to 10 films offers films that may not otherwise get seen, because what happens is, as you said, these smaller films get to say, oh, we were nominated for Best Picture, and that all of a sudden creates more buzz, creates more excitement, and then therefore causes people to want to go see movies that are not the typical tentpole movies. We see people, people always complain, oh, there's no original stories in Hollywood, there's only the same old reboots and, these big action tentpole movies. Well, this is a chance for people to find out about some of those smaller films that they wouldn't otherwise applies here. Additionally, there have been some incredible films that were snubbed from nominations. I mean, if you look at some historical, some of the greats, Some Like It Hot, Psycho, North by Northwest, Vertigo. Alfred Hitchcock was snubbed for 3 different films that really have stood the test of time. Pan's Labyrinth, one of my favorite films of all time, snubbed for an Oscar. Animated films like Dumbo and Pinocchio were not nominated, and this was in a time when there were only 5 nominees. Additionally, the Oscars every year comes under fire for lack of diversity. And why is that? It's because you have a specific pool of people who are in the Academy who are voting based on their preferences and what they see and what they like. When you open it up, that just creates more opportunity for more films. I think it's a fantastic, and also, you know what? If there's one thing that I do acknowledge that, yes, if you aren't nominated in any other categories, it is kind of hard to go, well, then how can it be nominated for Best Picture? The only compromise that I guess could be made is if PricewaterhouseCoopers, and this might be a little controversial, I just thought it up right now, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. If PricewaterhouseCoopers, as the accounting firm who does all the balloting, what if there were a film that fit into the 10, the top 10 films nominated for Best Picture before the announcements, if the accounting firm can say, okay, well, if you're not nominated in any other categories, they're just left off that list.
I like the rule. I mean, because going back to your
rule, like what I just said.
I like that rule. Yeah,
and we don't know. Like maybe, let's say, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say anything. Like, let's pick a movie. Like Joker, for example. I mean, obviously, we know that Joker is a big contender for Best Picture.
And has some significant other nominations, yes.
Okay, 1917, the movie that if it doesn't win Best Picture, for me, I will cry. And I will stamp my feet, and I will be very, very angry. I want 1917 to win Best Picture. So let's just say 1917 as a hypothetical, because it's going to win. Say 1917 did not get any other nominations, as if. It just wouldn't have been announced. And maybe people could say, oh, well, I bet that but PricewaterhouseCoopers is sworn to secrecy. They can never say. We just wouldn't know. And it would have gone down in the history books as one of those, it should have been, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I've always had a hard time with the notion of how can you make an argument that this film A, is one of the 10 best films of the year, or let's say in the case of a lot of years, 8. One of the 8 best films of the year, when you're not saying its director was one of the best directors, that its lead actress was one of the best lead actresses, that its lead actor was one of the lead actors, that any of its supporting actors were any supporting.
That its sound design wasn't strong enough.
That its screenplay wasn't one of the best screenplays, that its cinematography wasn't one of the best. So how can you make that right? Because you brought up Pan's Labyrinth, right? Mm-hmm. Pan's Labyrinth did not get a Best Picture nomination. Yet. It was nominated for Best Screenplay, it was nominated for Best Cinematography, and it was nominated for Best Director. How do you have a film you're saying is one of the best
screenplays, grand trifecta.
Best Director, Best Cinematography, and it doesn't get a Best Picture nomination?
That's the holy trinity of what makes a Best Picture.
Yeah, I mean...
That right there, those 3 things.
I never once considered it. I think that would be a great default rule, that the accounting firm goes through the ballots and said, okay, we do have a picture here nominated for Best Picture. However, no acting nominations, no directing nominations, no screenplay nominations, no cinematography nominations. You cannot, with a straight face, then say, if it doesn't have any of the major nominations, how can you say it is one of the best films of the year?
And I will also say this, and I know, again, I'm an actor, I should be, but I also don't think that actor or supporting actress I don't think that the acting should be one of those categories. I think it should be one of the holy trinity of what should be a Best Picture. And a great actor does not Best Picture make, my opinion.
Right. But it can make it for a lot of audiences. A lot of audiences, if the right actors in the right role, can do a lot for them.
Yes. However, I had this argument with my agent last night. I'm like, I should, in hindsight, why wasn't I arguing with him about get me more auditions? But I just come from an audition, so I guess I can't complain. But I was having this argument with my agent last night. He was going on and on about how amazing Marriage Story is. And I said, let's be real. If it weren't Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver in those roles, and also Laura Dern, who was phenomenal. If it weren't those actors in those roles, would the movie have been as strong? I don't know. You take two lesser actors, and I named them last night with him, but I won't do that on this platform because I'm not an asshole, unlike many of you maybe think I am. If you take those two actors out, does the movie stand alone? I don't know. I would say maybe not. But you take a movie like 1917, and while the actors are wonderful and absolutely did their jobs, and I'm actually sad that they didn't get more recognition, the film itself stands the test. It is, as I call it, an actor-proof film. You cannot mess that film up.
You know what that reminds me of? I remember, this is going back to the day, there was a follow me here. I know it's a sports analogy, but this is an easy, relatable one. Back in the day, there was a goaltender. There was a goaltender in hockey by the name of Dominik Hasek,
okay,
who was stupid good. I mean, stupid good. I mean, in the Olympics, he basically screwed Canada, destroyed his team, and yet he just wouldn't let anything go in the net.
He was just like the king of
so
touchdowns.
They won. Nothing was going to go by him, right? Nothing was going to go by him. So the argument would often come up. It's like, okay, but that team, because he played on Detroit for a while, he played on Buffalo for a while. So the argument was,
he was a Red Wing. I like that.
Their team isn't
there.
actually all that good. Mm-hmm. It's just that they've got this goaltender. And I'm like, but the argument the other way goes, but that's part of what makes the team. That's part of what makes that team. And to me, like when you're looking at something like Marriage Story, because the performances were so good, it is difficult to imagine what would this movie have been like without those performances. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, but that's a key part of the movie.
Okay,
you know?
You're right. I see that.
And, you know, would the performances have been as good if it was a different director in there directing the performers a little bit differently? Mm-hmm. Would the performances have come across as well if the screenplay wasn't quite there to help elicit that? I mean, I just see that as this kind of totality thing. So I don't know. But I just think but the bottom line is, though, if you got a movie and you can't say any of these 6, 7 categories, you don't have a nomination in any of those 6 or 7 major categories, and other films do, how can you make an argument that this is one of the 8 best films of the year or one of the 9 best films of the year, where others who are nominated in these things aren't? I mean, and I thought your Pan's Labyrinth example is a perfect example of that, you know? Right.
I do think, however, that the idea that a film should not be nominated just because it has no chance of winning, I don't necessarily agree with that. And even though I know that this is not a political show, so this is not a political statement. However, if you look at the large number of Democratic nominees that still are in the race, like I was looking at the list yesterday and I was like, well, this person has no possibility of winning. Like clearly, like it's just mathematically impossible for X person to win. And they're still campaigning. They're still in the race. And I'm like, why? What is the purpose of that? But at a certain point, I go, well, in the long run, for this person, for their political career, is their longevity in the campaign and being able to sustain that until a certain point. Maybe that gets them further to where they want to be. Maybe they don't get elected president, but maybe they get, placed as Secretary of State or as Attorney General or blah, blah, blah. Maybe they get a place in the cabinet. Who knows of the person who does get that, who does win. But I think it's kind of a similar analogy because maybe this film, whatever film that's nominated, doesn't have a chance of winning Best Picture, but because of its nomination and its prominence and the fact that its name continues to stay out there, more people are interested in seeing that film and, understanding a little bit more about what that film is about.
So the question here is, guys, what do you think? I'll tell you what, I do myself kind of lean toward, every year that passes, I am getting the argument more and more to go back to 5. But as of right now, I'm still kind of in that camp that I like having the big award, having a little bit of a broader field. Yeah. I still kind of lean there. But I wanted to make that the topic of today's question of the day. So I threw it over to you guys to ask, how do you guys feel about that? The question is, considering at least half of the nominees have no chance of winning, is it time for the Oscars to go back to just 5 Best Picture nominees, or is having more films be recognized still worth it? And right now, I put this up just before we started the show. 1,800 of you guys have registered to vote. Right now, 33.4% of you are saying go back to 5 nominees, make it a pure race, just really have films in there that are actually going to have a chance. But 66.6% of you guys are kind of agreeing with us right now that as of right now, the idea of getting more recognition for a couple of extra movies that really did wonderfully or did a good job, still worth keeping it around. But I'll be curious to see if this number changes year after year. If we start to see more and more people looking to go, and I don't know, maybe my own opinion is going to change too. For right now, I feel comfortable with the ones that
voted,
you vote. There you go. So Erin's got her vote in there. So how do you guys feel about it? Jump down into the comments section below and let me know your thoughts. All right.